Good evening everyone and welcome to tonight's Creative Hobart Forum where we are celebrating our designation as a UNESCO City of Literature. So the word, it's quite lovely, yes, applause is always deserved when we talk about Hobart, Nipaluna, City of Literature. But if we're honest about the word literature, it can seem a little bit exclusive and pretty exclusionary, especially in this state where only half of us struggle with being able to read and write. Half of us struggle daily with that, reading and writing. But tonight you will see and hear literature in all its many forms. And what better day to do this on than World Literacy Day. I acknowledge that we're here on land that's never been ceded. We are here on Aboriginal land. And as we advance into the proceedings, I'd like you to give Shelter Belt, who have heralded you all in with their dulcet tones, give them a round of applause. My name's Rachel Edwards. I'm the Events Coordinator at State Library and Archives and I'm your host this evening. But I am actually channeling Sue Hayes, who you may have glimpsed on the slideshow as you came in. Sue is the UNESCO City of Literature convener for Nipaluna Hobart. However, she's currently in Ljubljana in Slovenia and she's attending an international UNESCO City of Literature meeting, putting us on a world stage. Your housekeeping for this evening: there are accessible toilets located on the left-hand side as you exit this gorgeous ballroom's doors. And we have a hearing loop, and if you have any other accessible queries, please see Hobart City staff for assistance. Also, this event is being documented through video and photography, and if you'd prefer not to be captured, please let the same staff members know that as well. Now, you're all esteemed in my eyes to be here celebrating us as an internationally recognised City of Literature. But I note that we're also joined by Vicar Bailey, who's an MP, Deputy Leader of the Greens in the House of Assembly, Helen Burnett, MP, a member of the Tasmanian House of Assembly, Councillor Mike Dudder from the City of Hobart, Alderman Louise Bloomfield from the City of Hobart, and we have apologies from the Lord Mayor, Councillor Anna Reynolds, and the Acting Lord Mayor, Councillor Dr Zelinda Sherlock. Our first speaker is Michael Stretton, who is the CEO for the City of Hobart. I'm sure he's familiar to most of you. He's been a great advocate for a City of Literature and up north, the UNESCO City of Gastronomy, which has now kind of spread its wings to being beyond just a city of gastronomy, UNESCO recognised also. So he has been a great advocate for this alongside the city's ambassador, Lord Mayor Anna Reynolds. So thank you, Michael. I'd like to invite you up to the stage.
Well, thanks, Rachel. And look, I'd like to add my welcome to everyone here tonight. It's fantastic to see so many people come out on a Monday night to celebrate something very exciting, and that's Hobart's designation as the UNESCO City of Literature. So thanks very much for coming out. So look, this prestigious status was the result of a long-standing vision and championed by our Lord Mayor, Councillor Anna Reynolds, who first brought the idea to the Council back in 2016. So in 2023, the formal support was received by the full council to apply to UNESCO, and then Hobart was ultimately successful in receiving the designation in late 2023. So led by the Lord Mayor and certainly supported and backed up by the Council, that the advocacy has helped place Hobart on the global literacy map, affirming our city's place among the world's most creative and culturally rich communities. The UNESCO Creative Cities Network promotes international cooperation between cities that sees creativity as accelerators of sustainable development. Creative fields include craft and folk arts, design, film, gastronomy, literature, media, arts and music. This designation represents a lifelong commitment to progressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals using creativity as a driver for action. Hobart is a city of storytellers, and our City of Literature status allows the city to broadcast this internationally, facilitating cultural exchange and enhancing the city's reputation as a cultural destination. It will also provide an opportunity for broad collaboration, amongst a remarkable global network, 53 cities across the world, each with their own literacy heartbeat, from Odessa in the Ukraine to Baghdad in Iraq, Lahore in Pakistan and Dunedin in New Zealand. This will allow innovative thinking to bring literacy benefits to the local and wider communities for many, many years to come. The designation isn't just a title, it's an invitation. It's an invitation to support our local literature and our literacy community and to connect with the international network that opens doors to residencies, conferences and collaborations that may have never been possible without having such access to the world network. So becoming a city of literature grounds and connects these parts to be an important cultural hub for Hobart as it emerges as a distinctive centre for engaging readers, for promoting social inclusion and literacy, for supporting writers and exploring inventive ways of telling and new ways of telling, unique Tasmanian stories now and for generations to come. So since receiving the designation in October of 23, we have been busy laying the groundwork. We've formalised the governance structure with the clear terms of reference for both our steering committee and the working group that will drive the designation. This ensures that our efforts are inclusive, strategic and sustainable. The City of Hobart has provided resources to support the project working group to transition to a sustainable governance model. This has involved being the contact point for all international network communications, broad administration support for the group and facilitating visioning sessions with certainly more of those to come. The working group has now developed and proposed a proposed secretariat which can now deliver a sustainable funding and governance model moving forward. But in order to be successful, it will be important that the various stakeholders and organisations work together, to drive our long-term aspirations of Hobart as a thriving city of literature. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to being a city of literature, and there is an acknowledged grace period during which new cities take time to establish the governance and the funding and the programming to suit their purposes. So it's not uncommon for cities to take some years to be truly integrated and truly effective, and I think that our own experience is certainly mirroring that. The city has been warmly welcomed into the Creative Cities Network, receiving guidance, materials and offers for assistance from experienced members, and that's certainly something that we can take up. You can see from Sue being overseas at the moment. So the sub-network offers a buddy system, for new cities. And whilst we are still awaiting contact from our buddy cities, we are already communicating with Nottingham, Edinburgh, Melbourne and Launceston. So obviously we noted before that I played a small role in the designation that Launceston achieved as a UNESCO City of Gastronomy, a few years ago. That experience showed me firsthand how transformative the program can be. Obviously, they're further down the road, and I think they are starting to get runs on the board in terms of what they're doing and how that ignites, pride and fosters creativity and builds lasting community connections. And for me, some of my learnings from that experience has been you really have to crawl before you can walk. You need to make sure that you build your foundations and have wide networks to be able to set you up for success. The designation is bigger than any one organisation. It's for the whole city, and that's really important to understand, that it is about the network, not the value to any one organisation. And for me, two last points that I took from the Launceston experience is you really need to engage really well and effectively, engage often, and just bring people along on the journey. And that is really important, and an important part of that will be celebrating the successes as they come along, and that's something that we'll certainly do through many more nights like this and other initiatives. So we know that many of you are really eager to be involved, and that's why we're prioritising communication in the coming year. So we will strongly communicate in terms of what we're doing in the space. We're developing a dedicated website, building a social media presence, and launching an e-newsletter to keep everyone informed and engaged. So tonight, we're fortunate to have a lineup of speakers who will help us to explore the richness and diversity of the Hobart's literary landscape. They'll share insights and stories and visions and reflect on what it means to be a UNESCO City of Literature. So thank you for being here, for your curiosity and for your commitment to Hobart's creative future. So let's continue to write this story together.
Thank you, Michael. And you heard mention of an email newsletter. You can sign up for that on your way out. Please do. Very important. Now, the next series of presentations will follow the same format, where each speaker has 10 slides with 1 minute per slide. To start off, I'd like to invite Teresa Sainty, who is a woman probably known to a lot of you, but who, I don't know if I'm running a white girl gauntlet here, but I'd like to call a Palawa elder. So, Teresa, it's only fitting for us to start this creative city of literature with the story of oral storytelling from one of the oldest cultures in the world. Over to you, Teresa.
Hello, can you hear me? Pulingina. And there wasn't a statement of country or a welcome, because what I would have said in that is probably, if I remember, what I'm going to say in my talk. So, all right, here goes. So this is my talk is about orality, but it is about country being a library, and that is all kinds of country, not just land. Will that change? Oh, so I get a minute for that as well. Oh, okay. So, sorry, I've used up a minute now. And so country is our library. And when we talk about country, we mean sky country, Milaydina Wurundjeri. We mean Milaydina Muka, sea country, and we mean Milaydina country, and all things within country. And we read country. And that is part of our ways of being and doing and knowing, and it's knowledge that has been transmitted through generations upon generations, thousands of generations, in fact, orally until very recently. And I think it's a bit ironic that I have to use notes I have to read notes to talk about orality. Do I have to press this one? Oh, all right. So I got an extra minute or two. Okay, right. So this is my family, and we start, Aboriginal people start by positioning ourselves. It tells other Aboriginal people we sit, so where I sit or fit within my community here in Lutruwita, Tasmania, and it's something that, you know, we introduce ourselves when we go to other people's countries on the Big Island. We are a community of strong women. Our community was reborn, if you like, by 9 strong Aboriginal women, and I come from a long line of strong Aboriginal women. So we have my great-grandmother, Violet Mansell, we have my nan in the amazing mohair coat, Una Mansell, and then my mum, who's 85 this year, Connie Mansell. I just wanted to, I guess, set the scene in terms of before invasion and colonisation. We were an island of around about 9 nations, and we talk in terms of 9 nations, and each of those nations or language groups had their own languages, and they were all transmitted orally. And so there was no need for, borders and border forces or country carved up into, all compartmentalised, because the borders, if you like, people knew where their country began and where their country finished, and there was a lot of crossover. This slide is amazing. I think it talks to where we began, where the first ancestor Palawa was created in the Milky Way there by Moini and Rumitina, who were two star brothers. And as I said, all country is a library, and if you look at that slide, and all of those stars are the books in that library, and how amazing is that? And that galaxy there that is called the Milky Way tells us who created Palawa, the first ancestor, who gave us fire, Pumpina, Gemini, and that wasn't written down until the 1830s when Robinson wrote that down from what he was told. This is where sea country and sky country connect. It's a beautiful slide. It's actually not from Lutruwita, Tasmania. I took it in Larrakia country week before last, but I thought it was an amazing slide to show you the connect between Sky Country, Miladina Warrankili, and Miladina Muka, and then you've got the sandy beach, which is Miladina, and we read, as I said, we read country, we read what the clouds are doing. We read how the waves are rolling in, and we are the first storytellers, by the way, in terms of, and the first stories were the stories of creation. This is just another slide of country, and how this is Tarkaina. Country is under threat. She's so fragile, and so we speak to country orally. We dance on country or for country. We sing to country, and we read that country, and we can see whether she is unwell, and we can see whether she is being cared for in an appropriate way, in the way that our people have always done. And these are our family members. Each of these trees tell a story, and it's not written down. It is oral. It's them having been within that landscape for so long. Isn't this a beautiful image? This is Noina, or the southern aurora. You can imagine the stories that have been told by our people. Many of those stories that we don't know ourselves because of the history of Lutruwita, and because those old people, a lot of those old people with those stories are no longer here, and their languages and stories died when they did. But we can reimagine those stories, and I have a story in my head just from looking at that amazing image that was taken by Paul Holan. And this is, I guess this is another kind of language. This is about, it's kind of orality. It's not a written language. It's kind of in between. But again, it tells a story. It tells a story without having to use words, to use, the written story. Often we don't know what story that tells, but it's around identity, it's around connections to families and to country, and it's there, hopefully forever, and it's told by the people and by country, by the ochre that comes from country and that is placed on the walls of rock shelters or caves, or in that instance calico. Our culture is passed down, has always been passed down orally, and even now that we can read about it in books and we can write about it ourselves in our language. Since the advent of Palawakani, the language program that I've been privileged to be working in since 1997, we can write songs, we can sing to country in our language again, and we can dance on country again, singing those songs. But this is one particular cultural practice that has continued without interruption, and it has always been handed down verbally, orally, and it's still handed down that way, as I said, although we can write about it now. We have written about it ourselves. This image I really liked because it kind of shows that connection between, family members in this case, but between Aboriginal people and sitting on country. This is a photograph taken at Nullu, West Point, a number of years ago, and we're talking about actually sitting in that particular place, and there's a lot of dome-shaped hut depressions in that place, and we sat in those, and we imagined the conversations and the education and the stories that had kind of passed through the grasses and those huts and around the people that were there regularly. I put this there here. This is because unlike conventional intellectual property rights such as patents and copyrights and trademarks, which are registered to a specific entity or individual, the intellectual properties of Indigenous peoples and Indigenous cultural communities are communally owned. And that's a reminder that whether something is shared with you, you might be shown how to do something, as is our way of sharing, it doesn't give you open access to that. It doesn't give you the right to be a teacher of that or to become the expert of that. You've been gifted with that information, because that's, Aboriginal people generally are happy to share. Ngāri nina tū, thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. That was great. Thank you for having me. I am Jane Rawson and I'm the editorial manager of Ireland. I'm also an author of some books and a PhD student in creative writing. I'm going to move it on. Ireland is a literary journal that lives in Lutruwita, Tasmania, on the lands of the Palawa people. This magazine started life in 1979, and next week, Ireland issue 175 will be published. While a lot of you are probably readers, many of you won't have encountered a literary journal before. Literary journals like Ireland publish and pay writers and share their work with a broad audience here and overseas. I'm not going to be talking directly to my slides, mostly just about Ireland generally, but this is from one of the early issues and is an article about James McQueen, who is a Tasmanian author who's slightly disappeared, but if you go back into Ireland, you'll find much writing about and by him. So, for some writers, a literary journal is the first place they'll be published. Literary journals are the places where these writers come to find their voice and to build their skills, to get guidance from experienced editors, and to learn how to work with professional arts organisations. It's the place where they pick up skills like invoicing and reading contracts that will stand them in really good stead through their career. For more experienced writers, publication in literary journals is one of the few ways to keep getting paid as your career develops. Literary journals help writers build community with other writers. It can be a lonely profession, but publication in a literary journal gives you the chance to make new relationships with your peers. And it can also get your work read and your career supported by more established writers and by editors elsewhere in the industry, including in book publishing. Ireland publishes many kinds of writing: poetry, essays and short stories, graphic narratives, otherwise known as comics, and visual arts features. This slide is from our most recent Gwen Harwood Poetry Prize, which I'll be talking about a little bit later on. Our next issue's poems include a sestina and a glossa. Maybe someone can correct my pronunciation on that. Poems about time spent in radiation therapy and living as a fish. There is a story about two unstable families in 1970s Adelaide, another about the child of an ancient god, and an absurdist look at the life of a house cleaner caught up in an apocalypse. Romance flourishes among jigsaw pieces in our graphic narrative. We dive into the remarkable colours of Jennifer Tyers in our arts features. And in essays, many of our writers are asking what it means to be Australian, from the strange masculinity of Queensland's rainforests to the strange Lamingtons of London's Aussie-themed pubs. Our writers range from a Filipino archivist to a Palawa geologist, a Prime Minister's Prize-winning poet to a classical musician, the author of 11 books, and a university creative writing student who is being published for the very first time. But Ireland is not just a print magazine. We also publish online with a new poem, story or essay going out pretty much every week. Oh, and brief break for the slide. This is Megan Clement, who won our first non-fiction prize and went on to publish a book based on the essay that she had published in Ireland. So, online. Pieces published online can reach so much further than those in the print magazine. They're free to read and easy to share, and they reach all corners of the world. And they allow us to publish in forms that just don't work in print. We've recently started publishing audio poems, and we're excited to find more ways to use our website to make Ireland accessible to more people. And this is one of those audio poems which I can't play to you, but you can pop onto the website and listen to. The writers we publish are chosen in an open submissions process where anyone living in Australia or Australians overseas can send in their stories, essays and poems. These are read by Ireland's specialist editors who sift through the many, many pieces we get and choose the very best for publication. The writers selected work closely with those editors to perfect their pieces. Helping writers develop their skills and make their work the best it can possibly be is an important part of what we do at Ireland. And we also run publication prizes. As I mentioned, the Gwen Harwood Poetry Prize, named in honour of Tasmania's thrillingly feisty poet, awards its winner $2,000. The Island Non-Fiction Prize is currently in hiatus. We hope to bring it back. But in previous years, the winner has received $3,000. And this year, we are running a Nature Writing Prize in partnership with Fuller's Bookshop and the Tasmanian Land Conservancy. Judges are reading through the entries now, and the winner will be awarded a writing retreat on one of the TLC's beautiful reserves. All those prize winners are also published in Ireland. This is one of our most recent graphic novels, this picture, graphic narratives, sorry. But Ireland is not just about publishing. Helping emerging writers develop and established writers share their skills is an important part of what we do. We have run webinars on nature writing and on creating graphic narratives. Earlier this year, Stellar Prize-winning poet Sarah Holland-Batt came to Hobart to run a poetry masterclass for us. And later this month, Booker Prize shortlisted novelist Charlotte Wood will come to Launceston to teach a masterclass on deepening and liberating your creative life. For the past 2 years, University of Tasmania creative writing and English students have undertaken editorial internships with Ireland. And at our launches, we host panels where emerging and established writers share tips about the craft of writing. We'll soon be launching a formal mentorship program. And of course, next year we'll see the very first Ireland Readers and Writers Festival on the last weekend of May, with a program of panels, workshops and masterclasses for all kinds of readers and writers. All of this work is supported by funders and partners, and we are grateful to the Tasmanian Government, Creative Australia and the Copyright Agency, as well as to our design partner Fatago and the University of Tasmania for their support. This support matters. It enables us to pay writers, and paying writers is important if we are to hear from a range of people. When writers aren't paid for their work, only people with spare time, people who don't need to work, can write. That's not many of us. And our culture needs to hear the voices of all kinds of people, not just those with money. And at Ireland, we set ourselves firm targets to make sure we are publishing all kinds of voices. First Nations voices, Tasmanian voices, voices of culturally and linguistically diverse writers, and voices that have not been heard before. And of course, funding magazines like Ireland also supports jobs. We often hear about the importance of jobs in Tasmania's extractive industries, but not so often about those of people who work in the arts. But these are skilled jobs. Ireland's business manager brings decades of experience, as well as a huge reserve of creativity, lateral thinking and resourcefulness to her work, and she is ably supported by our talented finance officer. Our 5 specialist editors bring kindness, craft, and tireless attention to the work of the writers and artists we publish. I, somewhat embarrassingly, have 30 years of editorial experience, I just figured out. All of these workers contribute to the economy and the culture of Tasmania and give so much more to it than they are paid for. And this matters too because journals like Ireland provide an archive of the cultural concerns of the time. When you read a literary journal from decades ago, it gives you an insight into what people were thinking and talking about. The things that mattered enough for a writer to devote days, weeks and months to getting their thoughts down on paper. It's a whole different lens than reading the newspaper. This is a difficult time for writers, and I'll just mention this briefly as I'm getting to the end of my 10 minutes. With the rise of AI, the closure of many arts courses at university, the collapse of writers' festivals that provide an important income for writers, and most recently the loss of the journal Meanjin, which was closed down last week by Melbourne University Press, it feels like it's a really tough time to be out there working as a writer. And that's why places like Ireland matter. Literary journals are not money-making operations, they all face financial challenges, but the value that they bring to culture and their role in underpinning cities of literature such as Naarm, Melbourne and Nipaluna, Hobart is incalculable. So I'll just leave you with a note from Meanjin's first editor, Clem Christensen, which opened that journal's first edition in 1940. He wrote, "We believe that it would be a grave error to suppose the nation can drop its mental life, its intellectual and aesthetic activities for 3 or 5 or more years, neglecting them and those trained to minister to them, and then pick everything up again as if nothing had happened. Literature and art, poetry and drama do not spring into being at the word of command. Their life is a continuous process, growing within itself, and its suppression is death. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you'd like to know more about Island, you can visit our website, islandmag.com, or I'll be up the back where the Island magazines are afterwards. Thank you.
We'll look at Teresa and Jane. Now, to break these presentations up a little bit, I would like to invite young Dawkins up onto the stage to share some of his spoken words. Now, Young's gorgeous lyrical performances are a testament to exactly how broad this church of literature that we exist in are. So come on up, Young.
I've been reliably informed that it's now spring in Tasmania. I remain hopeful. The lilac thief. She is aghast as I explain that once each year, just about now, I drive slowly through the neighborhoods, looking for likely targets. And when I find one, I park just across the street and walk over with a great inner calm. I use the very sharpest snips possible and cut 1, 2, but never more than 3 clumps of perfectly bloomed purple lilacs, then move on until the lead-heavy scent inside the car makes me almost dopey. I bring them home and arrange them in glass vases, place them where they will find afternoon light. But she cries, "That is just wrong. Lilacs belong to all the people." Yes, I say yes, and I am one of the people. Is Hobart the best city in the world to be a poet? Set aside Paris for a moment and consider some of what we have here. Silver words, seasonal poets, the Tasmanian Writers' Centre, the Tim Thorne Prize for Poetry, the Women's Poetry Oasis, and what you've just heard, our most important, one of Australia's most important literary magazines launching a festival for readers and writers, and there's poetry in it. And our largest bookstore actually has a cafe poet laureate in residence. Come on. In fact, the next time you're waiting for the light to change at the corner of Murray Street in Liverpool, at least 2 of the people standing next to you are poets. Believe it. The Last Chance Saloon. The Last Chance Saloon leans up against a relinquished corner in the broken part of town. Flickering green neon sign, bar. This is where they drift and congregate, doomed world preachers, smooth truth teachers, God-busting atheists, all of them filled with an urgent need to speak. First come the rappers in their customized caddy, followed in by a free verse drifter. 2-page poets sip white wine and whisper haiku up their sleeves. Pink-haired Lady Villanelle arrives, twirling a parasol made of sonnets. At last, the dubstep hip-hop crew, inked up, wild-eyed, stunningly stoned. Nobody's certain what sparks it off. A stare held too long, someone's awkward elbow, absinthe tipped down a generous blouse, but boom, they're at it. Dactyls flying like stuffed word bullets, similes ricocheting off warped pine walls, whole couplets and quatrains falling down dead, until a ragged voice spits out one last line, and the shattered room collapses. Standing alone at the end of the bar, nursing a pint of Stella Artois. The old poet has seen all this before. He remembers when he was too fast, too certain of the power of his words, ready to slam everybody, just name the time and place. Now he reflects on the eloquence of silence, things you think and imply, but don't say, the space you leave for others. He drains his glass and walks away. The American poet and journalist Don Marquis wrote, "Publishing a volume of poetry is like dropping a rose petal down the Grand Canyon and waiting for an echo." My wishes. Just pay the taxes right up front. They're going to get it anyway, and one good man is already gone, so let it go. Cash in the rest and stack it up across an old oak table in a quiet room with long windows and radiant light. Rest for a moment and reflect on the metaphysical meaning of money as the final measure of a lived life. That seems strange. Now take half, no, 2/3, and give it to the Scottish wife. She will be the hardest to leave, but she knows just where to scatter the ashes and the right words to whisper goodbye. There's a young boy I love with all of my heart. Peel off a fistful of bills, invest it well, and on his 18th birthday, give him the whole lot with the simple request that he take himself to Paris to see things. All the rest is for a party, the best party a dead man can throw. Rent an entire hotel on an exotic island, hire 2 or 3 bands, set up a dozen stocked bars, ice down magnums of champagne, roll in kegs of beer and food. Great counters of fresh shrimp, crab, lobsters, vegetables, dips, sorbets, and profiteroles. Invite everybody. Have the men wear linen shirts and faded shorts. The women, all gossamer and alluring. Let them eat, drink, and frolic. Old friends, remembering together and laughing so powerfully, it becomes difficult to breathe. And when the police come, for the second time, to knock off the noise, let them be so taken by the spirit of things that one grabs a cocktail from a passing tray, and the other finds a woman and begins to dance. And in a corner, there will be 2 young lovers who've wandered in from walking the beach to discover the source of such joyful noise with no idea at all why this is happening. Let them stand together, arm in arm, taking it all in. And then one will turn to the other and exclaim, What a life, my love. What a beautiful, beautiful life. I once had the extraordinary privilege to share a stage with the internationally acclaimed poet Charles Simic, who wrote, "Poetry is an orphan of silence. The words never quite equal the experience behind them." I'll leave you tonight with this. How the sky stays above us. I am changing now. The congregation of years, not age so much as a ripening view. And I have started speaking to trees. One big gum. Surely hundreds of decades. I stop and look hard where peeling bark reveals cambium whorls like human fingerprints and multiples of tiny crawling things are not concerned. I say, thank you, grandfather, for holding up this part of the sky, for your shade and shelter. And after we kill them, we count the rings, marvel at what must have been. Cut me, you'll see rings and deep bruises. Imagine what put them there. But until the long night comes, I am like that gum. Hold up my part of the sky, gives shelter and shade to those who come by.
Thank you, Young. I think the word poetry, like the word literature, can sometimes have that exclusionary feeling, those words, but when you hear it, it makes such a difference. Now, up next is Patrick Gregory. He's the Executive Director of Libraries Tasmania. He's my boss. And he, here on this International Day of Literacy, will be talking about all things library and literacy. So, welcome to the stage, Patrick.
Thanks, Rachel, and I have the misfortune to follow young Dawkins, so thank you for whoever scheduled that. I'm going to be talking a bit about libraries and literacy, one type of library, and thank you, Teresa, for your reflections earlier on country as a library. I think working in Libraries Tasmania, we do reflect sometimes that libraries, as we often think of them, are institutions that are at best 5,000 years old. The modern public library is about 200 years old, but knowledge has been created and shared on country for way, way, way longer than that. So I'm going to be talking, yes, about Libraries Tasmania and the ways that we can support the Hobart City of Literature. And my time starts now. A city of literature needs writers, it needs storytellers, it needs publishers, it needs booksellers, but it also needs readers, and that is our core business. Libraries Tasmania, we connect books to readers. We've got a collection of over 500,000 books in our public libraries. That's the print books, another 100,000 online. And these are accessible all over Tasmania. If you happen to be in Smithton and you want a book that is held in Geeveston, you can ask for it and we'll send it to you free. It's a remarkable system and one not replicated anywhere else in Australia. We've got over 100,000 members, that's over 20% of the population. We have over 3 million books borrowed every year. About 2/3 of those are still in print format, about 1/3 of those are online. The borrowing of print books is trending ever so slightly down as the national average, and the use of ebooks continues to rise. We're also now 3 years into Tasmania Reads Week, which is a celebration of reading across Tasmania, and it covers events not only by Libraries Tasmania but a whole range of different organisations, and it's the perfect opportunity to promote Hobart City of Literature in March 2026 and marches beyond that. It's also a great opportunity to promote the benefits of reading, which we do every year, and I suspect everyone in this room would think that reading is an intrinsically good and pleasurable thing, but we also know that reading has well-documented health and wellbeing benefits, particularly in the mental health space. Reading for pleasure is one of the most important predictors of school success, and it correlates with creativity and develops the imagination and empathy. And there's a great report recently from Australia Reads called Understanding Australian Readers, which tells us about 75% of Australians read, about 30% read regularly, but that number might actually be declining. And one of the main takeaways from that report is that we tend to focus too much on avid readers, such as ourselves, when we should be giving more focus to people who want to read more, such as aspirational or lapsed readers. So one of my questions is, how might the Hobart City of Literature grow reading in a more inclusive way in Tasmania? Children and families. The best time to start reading is at birth. What we know about brain development emphasises the critical nature of the first 3 years. Being read to and reading with parents and caregivers is critical to developing future literacy skills. At Libraries Tasmania, Rock and Rhyme and Storytime, the sort of programs that you see there, are the most popular programs that we run across the state. And as part of City of Literature, we do need to encourage family literacy programs more broadly. How do we get young people involved in reading and writing? We're also taking quite a big emphasis at the moment on school libraries. They're a critical part of the reading ecosystem that are often neglected, and we're really trying to strengthen school libraries as part of the Department for Education, Children and Young People across the state. Moving on to adult literacy, in many of the conversations that we've had about the City of Literature to date, we agree that it needs to be for everyone, and Rachel touched on the challenges of the word literature. And literature and literacy, of course, have the same root, Latin root, the word for letter. They're all part of the same thing. We do, at Libraries Tasmania, run a state-wide program to help people build their literacy skills. But I just do want to address one sort of factoid about adult literacy levels in Tasmania. And it's often spoken about as if 50% of Tasmanians are illiterate or have serious struggles with their literacy. And it's taken from a PIAC survey, an international survey from 2011, which rated people on 5 levels of literacy, where 3 is the average. 48% of Tasmanians were below that literacy level, but the figure was 44% nationally. So level 3 literacy just means sort of average levels of literacy. It's no surprise that 50% of people are below that. There's a lot of people out there that do need support with reading and writing, and we're very happy to help them. But I do wonder sometimes if the way we talk about that in the context of deficit and stigma positions Tasmania in a certain way, and I do wonder if Hobart City of Literature can put a more positive spin on literacy and literature. And just quickly, while we're sort of in a bit of myth-busting mode, I just wanted to talk briefly about 2610. It's something that a lot of people are aware of, but not really aware what it is. 2610, we've got a small secretariat in Libraries Tasmania. 2610 is what's known as a collective impact model, and it's a brand, and it's something that you'll see applied to a whole range of programs across the state, adult literacy service, employment programs, a range of other things. It's not just a single organisation that you can go to for adult literacy help. What has Libraries Tasmania actually done specifically relating to the City of Literature to date? We've tried to give more support to Tasmanian writers, and in March this year we launched the Writers' Room at the State Library and Archives of Tasmania at 91 Murray Street. It's on level 2 if you want to go and take a look. In that, we've got free bookable meeting rooms for writers and writing organisations. We've got some beautiful places to sit and write with a lot of natural light looking out at Canandaigua. And we've got some collections there that provide not only showcase Tasmanian writers, but also provide some of the tools that writers might want when they're working. Across Libraries Tasmania, we particularly love people to read Tasmanian authors. We stock and promote their work. We do author talks, and we do find that works by Tasmanian writers are regularly in our top 10 most borrowed items every year. We're also focusing on raising awareness of Tasmania's significant literary history, and again in March we launched Tasmanian Voices, the Writers Who Make Us, to draw attention to writers and stories that have significantly shaped our view of Tasmania over the last 2 centuries. We inducted 21 writers at that time who we think are significant in different ways. They've ranged from Andrew Bent to Nan Chauncey, Roger Scholes, Auntie Ida West, Richard Davey, who wrote that great West Coast play, The Ship That Never Was. So we've tried to take a really broad view of what a writer is. And each year with Tasmanian Voices, we intend to induct new writers into that. So next year we're hoping to run a bit of a community engagement program about which authors you would like to see join Tasmanian Voices. And if you haven't had a look at that, please do see the writers and books that are in there already. You might find something new and surprising. We are going to continue to have a literary theme to some of our State Library and Archives programming. Thanks, Rachel. That's what Rachel's hard at work on at the moment. We've already had some great talks on some of the Tasmanian Voices inductees, such as Auntie Ida West and Caroline Leakey. We've also recently had a very successful exhibition, Revolution and Silence, in the last week, so get along down and see it if you haven't already, which is looking at the issue of censorship and banned books. And as a City of Literature, I think we're all committed to making sure that we've got a diversity of voices in there. So we do need to be aware of threats to that diversity and the rising tide of calls to ban books, which is particularly prevalent in the United States, but which is finding its way more and more, unfortunately, into Australian discourse as well. Some of the other programs that we've got are a couple of writing fellowships in partnership with Island magazine, and we'll be running those again for 2026, so watch out for those. We also celebrate Hobart's literary heritage through our special role in collecting Tasmanian literary history. The City of Literature designation was partly based on that history, and we've got copies of heaps of old and obscure Tasmaniana, truckloads of newspapers. We're a legal deposit library, which means that we get a copy or should get a copy of everything published in Tasmania. If you put all of our collections end to end down the Brooker Highway, that would be irresponsible, but they would in fact reach over the Bridgewater Bridge. There's over 30 kilometres of items in those collections. And some of the historical firsts that Tasmania can claim include the first work of literature published in Australia, a rip-roaring yarn about Michael Howe the Bushranger, published in 1818, Australia's first novel, Henry Savary's Quintus Servington, not a great read. The first, the first free newspaper published in Australia, free of government censorship, by Andrew Bent. Which just leads me to close with another Tasmanian historical literary first, and if you can indulge me on this one, because I'm one of about 7 people in Australia with a keen interest in the history of libraries. One day I'm going on hard quiz. But it's a little known fact that the Old Mechanics Institute on Melville Street between Murray and Elizabeth is the site of Australia's oldest public library. It was created by the Wesleyan Chapel as a way to help the local populace have access to a range of improving literature, and was opened in 1826, so bicentenary next year. Our colleagues at the State Library of New South Wales often claim to be Australia's oldest public library, but they've missed the key words continuously operating, as I regularly remind them. So I do feel that Libraries of Tasmania has got some serious pedigree that underpins the work that we're doing to this day to support reading, literacy and literature in Tasmania, and also the Hobart City of Literature initiative. Thank you.
sorry, ruining the place already. It didn't take long. Hello everybody. Look, thanks for the opportunity to be here. My name's Ali Dugan and I'm presenting with my esteemed colleague and friend Cholpon Bond. So our topic tonight is that we are talking about literacy and storytelling for diverse communities, and a little bit of a hard act to follow with everyone that's gone before us. But I was speaking for myself, not a problem for Cholpon. But we will be talking about, I suppose, the importance of literacy for diverse communities. So I think our time starts now. Is that it? Yeah. Okay, so look, my journey into this, and I feel a little bit like an imposter because I'm not here as part of a diverse community. I suppose I'm here as an observer and someone that's experienced and an advocator for those particular communities. But look, currently I manage the Phoenix Centre, which is a specialist torture and trauma service at the Migrant Resource Centre. In my late 30s, I did a social work degree and ended up working in sort of foster care support, and then was incredibly lucky to have the opportunity to go and work in 2013 with young men that had come seeking asylum by boat to Australia, that were in the Pontville Detention Centre and now are coming then out into community detention. Really, really amazing job, and have incredibly wonderful memories about that time. I then proceeded to work for the Australian Red Cross, and then for many years, and then about 14 months ago I stepped into a role at Phoenix. Over those years I've heard so many stories, many inspiring, most inspiring, many heartbreaking. So it's changed the way that I see community and the importance of people being able to share their voices. We support people at the Migrant Resource Centre through counselling, settlement services, youth programs, advocacy, employment services and community development. But really what we do is walk alongside people to build safety, belonging and opportunity here in Tasmania. For the communities that we work with, literacy isn't just about reading and writing, it's about access, it's about having a voice. It's about being able to take part in everyday life. There's lots of programs in Tasmania. We've heard about Libraries Tasmania, but TasTate, Max Solutions, offering English and other classes to adults and youth. There are also many other services and offering different ways of I suppose, developing literacy for communities that are coming in from other countries. I think I really want to point out the importance of other ways, though, of podcasts, of videos, of art, social media, cookbooks that Cholpon will end up talking to shortly. Many people in their own countries did not have the opportunity to learn to read and write, so the importance of using other ways of communication is just so important for these diverse communities. The importance of interpreters and bicultural workers. It's crucial. They make sure that stories are told clearly and honestly, and that people's voices aren't lost or misunderstood. So storytelling at MRC happens in many ways. Some people have published books. We've got a little book here that if people want to have a look at later, it's called Writing Our Worlds by the youth in 2023. I think 100 young people were part of that, telling their stories. There's numerous ways that we end up telling our stories. We use art. On this slide that you're seeing at the moment is a young student that we have at the moment in art therapy. Name's Erin Darrigan, and she's making this beautiful sculpture of putting together little pieces of fabric with everyone's doing a little sewn story of what it means for them to either come to Tasmania or be living in Tasmania. And that's staff, bicultural workers, clients. It's been really beautiful to watch, and the stories that are shared through that program have just been really incredible. So I think it's a really lovely example of how to share stories and do that in a way that doesn't necessarily depend on having to read and write. We also recently have had Refugee Week back in June, and this is just a little video of that particular event. There's a lot of joy in that event, and there's a lot of storytelling going on in that event. There's a lot of connection, communication, and I think, look, it's a really lovely showcase of just how storytelling can come about as well, through art, just through those connections, through sharing food, through dance, through movement. It's just such an important way that we communicate. Okay, so I think probably just to end before Chopon begins, I think I just sort of really thought about, for our core communities, culturally and linguistically diverse communities, the importance or the opportunity of a UNESCO City of Literature, and was thinking about, I think it's really an invitation to make sure that migrant and refugee voices are part of Hobart's story. So it means promoting inclusion and intercultural dialogue, making English classes really accessible. You know, there's a lot of people that fall through the gaps, women that end up having children at a certain time, miss out on starting the class, have another child, miss out on learning English. It happens fairly frequently. Providing those safe spaces, like the beautiful writing hubs and community reading rooms that are welcoming for all cultures and abilities too, because we'll also get our different abilities, and it's sort of really wanting to make sure that we hear the stories of those who are quiet, those who might not be pushing themselves forward, maybe who haven't had the education that maybe someone else has had. So I just think that's a really important thing. Celebrating diversity, which including Indigenous and multilingual voices, building global connections to local stories, that they sit along stories from all around the world, and creating platforms, festivals, publications, forums where diverse voices are heard. For me, after a decade of hearing stories, I've learned that they don't just describe the past, they shape the future. So it's important. It's not just recognition, it's a responsibility. It's a responsibility to make sure that people who are often heard, least heard, get the chance to speak, write, perform and share their stories as part of Tasmania's cultural life. Sorry, Chalpa, over to you.
Саламатсыздар быя урматтуу коноктор. Бүгүнкү кечиңиздер менен. Hello, good evening everyone, and this is what I said just now in my native language. My name is Chopon and I'm from Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan is very small and very mountainous country in Central Asia. And here in Tasmania, when I mention Kyrgyzstan, people get confused. They call it Kyrgyzstan, Kurdistan, Kazakhstan. It's understandable because according to my own research, in whole Tasmania, me and my daughter, we are the only Kyrgyz people living here. So not many Kyrgyz here. So because we are celebrating today Literature Day, I can explain a little bit about countries which is ending with stan. So there are 7 countries ending with stan, and stan is translated from Persian language as a land of. For example, Kyrgyzstan is land of Kyrgyz people, Kazakhstan is land of Kazakh people, Uzbekistan is land of Uzbek people, etc. So 1876, when Russia invaded to our country and annexed all the territories, we became a part of Soviet Union. All our history and culture disappeared from the books and papers. And 1991, we got independence and became a democratic Kyrgyz Republic. 1992, Kyrgyzstan was admitted to the United Nations. And now about myself. 2022, I arrived to Tasmania to live with my Tasmanian husband. He's from Geelong, but we love to live in Tasmania. And around that time, I started to volunteer in Australian Red Cross in Connected Women's Group, where migrant women and the woman who lived in Tasmania since long time, they became together and we do different activities. One day we do yoga, one day we do art. We had also sessions about women health. Also we used to cook for each other. And one day when we were talking about different activities, the idea of creating a multicultural cookbook was born. About 20 women, they became together and they decided to share their traditional food, which was significant for their culture and for their country. And then kitchen facilities was organized. We had a professional photographer who was capturing all the process of cooking. And then after we cook, cookbook, multicultural cookbook, was compiled professionally by Australian Red Cross staff, in particular Alison Duggan and Chu. And after that, launch was organized. Our cookbook got popularity in media, so all media was talking about our cookbook, and we sold out all the copies in 1 week. In this cookbook, you will find a little bit story about the woman, from where she came from, what she is doing in Tasmania, when she came from, and little history about her, as well as a recipe of her traditional food. And this cookbook achieved successfully to bring all people together. As we know, food brings people together. And it was one of the best projects I was involved in. Thank you very much.
Sorry, just the other thing I was meant to mention is another book that's a Tasmanian book, and it's called The Bloody Unknown, and it's a really beautiful stories again of diverse individuals in the community. And if anyone wants to have a look at that, I know that there's some copies of this left, so if anyone's keen to have a look at that and purchase, I can talk to you afterwards. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. It's a great honour to be here. My name's Rain Allenson and I'm Assistant Publisher at 40 South. I'm going to be sharing the stage with Nikki Horan of Hobart Books to be talking a little bit about publishing and how publishing fits into the literary ecosystem here in our city of literature. I also just want to give a shout out to the latest publishing house that's just arrived on our scene, Evercreech Publishing, which was launched just last month by Adam Ouston. Very exciting to see yet another publishing house joining our ecosystem here, and much to celebrate. So 40 South Publishing has been running for nearly 30 years, celebrating Tasmanian places, people, environment and culture, and reflecting on what it means to be Tasmanian. Our audience is broadly those who live in Tasmania, those who wish that they live here, and those who wish they'd never left. The business started out in around 1996 as a quarterly magazine and then branched out into ethical, fee-for-service book publishing and statewide distribution. And today, 40 South Publishing is Tasmania's biggest book publisher, publishing dozens of high-quality books each year on a range of topics. Our brand is recognised around the state and is associated with high-quality production. And it's a great pleasure and privilege to be associated with reading the manuscripts that come in almost daily these days across a whole range of different genres, as you can see some of our most recent publications represented here. So I mentioned we started off as a magazine, and our magazine features high-quality writing and photography with informative and engaging articles on a range of topics such as wilderness and wildlife, economy, industry, culture, epicure, history, and human interest stories on the people of Tasmania. And the magazine is also a great place for emerging writers to start. I myself got this job as an assistant publisher after I submitted an article to the editor about my experience joining a choir after just arriving in Hobart, fresh after leaving my academic career behind. I'm a recovering academic, I like to say. And so the same could happen to you. You never know what happens when you submit an article to 40 South. In 2020, thanks to a generous grant, 40 South acquired a sophisticated digital Big Brother, a web portal that continues the tradition of good writing and photography. Only the scope and reach are far greater than we've ever achieved with the quarterly print magazine being accessible now all over the world. The publishing arm is something I'll come back to shortly. In terms of how we support social change, our publishing model provides an opportunity for emerging writers or those who might be looking for an alternative to the restrictions of traditional publishing, so authors who want more creative control over their work and the ability to maintain ownership of their intellectual property. But in addition, we also seek to encourage and celebrate work from new and emerging authors through a number of literary prizes, including the Tasmanian Writers' Prize, which is an annual short story competition on an island or island resident theme, and that's open to Australian and New Zealand citizens and permanent residents of all ages. The winner receives the cash prize and up to 10 finalists are published in our anthology. And just earlier this afternoon, we celebrated the winners of our Young Tasmanian Writers' Prize, which is a short fiction competition open to Tasmanians enrolled in years 7 to 12 at schools around Tasmania. So what does being a UNESCO City of Literature mean for us as publishers, and how is this an opportunity for the future? This, incidentally, is an image taken from Kansas City, where they were able to get funding to dress up a car park in the favourite books of local residents. So they had like a call, and these were some of the titles that were submitted as people's favourite books. So I can just imagine this on the side of the Argyle Street car park, for instance, just planting seeds out there for our councillors. So for us at 40 South Publishing, being part of a UNESCO City of Literature gives us new energy to consider the interplay of imagination, social justice, self and community, and our glorious natural environment, to come up with fresh ways of seeing and knowing and creating solutions to systemic problems by involving ourselves in the deep memory of people and place that the writers and story makers both preserve and create anew. 40 South looks for writing that emerges from this place, that responds to it, that challenges our understanding of it. We listen for voices that are able to express the challenges of change, that honour the past by showing clearly, without flinching, what is actually there. Publishers are connectors. We connect authors to readers, but also we connect them to booksellers, critics, schools, libraries, universities. Publishing creates communities. And since the days of Gutenberg, publishers have trafficked in the alchemy of ideas. That is why publishing is not like any other business. It embodies the conflict between what is commercially successful and what is culturally necessary. And without further ado, I pass over to my colleague, Nikki Horan. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Nikki Horan and I'm the founder and publisher of Hobart Books. Unlike many people talking here tonight, Hobart Books is very new, it's only a year old, and also I guess I'm here wearing other hats. Also I represent Tassie Editors as the Tassie Director of the Institute of Professional Editors, and also on the advisory board of the Master of Writing and Publishing. We don't have a publishing course at UTAS, so yeah, I have to go to the mainland for that at the moment. So my enterprise, Hobart Books, is a micro-publisher that's based right here in the city. It's still minty fresh. And Hobart, yes, it does have some commercial ambitions, certainly, but it's not our reason to exist. In real terms, we operate somewhere between an actual business and a social enterprise. The reason that I started Hobart was to contribute a different dimension to the literary landscape of Tasmania. We're basically a micro-sized publisher. We've got all the machinations of a larger mainland publisher, including 20 years of experience in book publishing. But we're focused on celebrating the abundance of writing and artistic talent that's right here. We bring lots of world-class best practice and publishing expertise to the... We're small enough to be creative, to take risks and to experiment and to find new ways to do things. Foremost, we create opportunities for emerging authors and artists to be published for the very first time, to build an audience, to build a publishing profile that they can then reflect to bigger publishers, to represent and to reflect the unique preoccupations and interests of Tasmanians on bookshelves, in our bookstores, and also on the shelves in our homes. We aim to reflect Tasmania in a positive way to our own population, and also to amplify the unique culture and lifestyle that Tasmanians have, both to each other and to reflect them beyond our shores as well. On the screen, you'll see some visuals flashing up. There's some new books that are coming soon from Hobart authors, with some artworks by Joanna Simpkin and also Sam Lyne. Since I joined City of Literature Working Group, I've learned a lot about its potential and its ability to shape the future of our literary scene. Hobart Books, along with members of the working group, proudly published the first initiative of City of Literature, which these beautiful photos, I didn't actually acknowledge it. Jessie Mumford took those gorgeous photos. And Voices of the Southern Ocean is a 50-strong author-strong anthology that showcases some of our best and some of our newest authors. First, we published it as this little gift book, and that was shared internationally and sent around to different cities of literature, so they had an opportunity to get a sense of the breadth and depth of our talent. And then I also published it as a smaller book, for sale, that has sold hundreds of copies to visitors to our state and also to locals. And it's a perfect pocket-size book, and it's been supported widely by booksellers and gift stores across the state, so thank you. So I think that this initiative is a really great example of the local focus but the international reach of being a city of literature. So too are the amazing residency and grant opportunities that come to Tasmanian writers now via their inboxes from other cities of literature. And that's probably one of the most exciting things. The idea that you can go on a month's residency overseas and get paid for it is can't be undervalued and wouldn't really come to us any other way. For me, the Nipalina Hobart City of Literature status spells one thing: opportunity. It's opportunity to connect with our city's deep and varied literature participants and open new channels and pathways for us to collaborate and amplify and energise. Now, I've seen this on an individual level within the working group, with our booksellers and publishers and authors and other creatives all sitting in the room, sharing ideas and cooking up ways to improve and, thinking about our future. It's an opportunity for children to reflect as young Tasmanians on their daily lives, and an opportunity for us to publish local themes that they can read in books, which will definitely help, reflect diversity in our community, but also support literacy efforts and their interest in, reading and seeing themselves in books. It's also the opportunity to bring together our individual voices into one single voice and advocate for the art and the craft of writing, the joy of reading, and making worthwhile connections locally and internationally. Our UNESCO status as a city of literature is like cracking open a fresh book, full of possibility, discovery and wonder. It's a chance for us to tell our own stories with our own unique voice. And I'd like to close with some wise words from one of the finest thinkers and wordsmiths of the last 100 years, the learned Dr. Seuss. You can find magic wherever you look. Sit back and relax. All you need is a book. Being a UNESCO City of Literature is an opportunity that invites us to explore the magic in our own stories, to share them boldly and to welcome others to the great creative life of our city. Thank you to the team who dreamed big to realise this UNESCO standing for our city. Thanks.
Hi everybody, my name is Lucy Cutting, as you can see on the screen, and I'm a radio presenter for ABC Radio in Tasmania on the statewide Sundays program. I was also previously a radio producer back in 2017 and am currently a features reporter for ABC as well. Prior to that, I worked in libraries and archives, and I also co-created a website dedicated to discussions about culture in Australia. That website is now an archived resource through Trove. So with this kind of background in mind, it's such a pleasure to be here on this stage talking about the power of words. Go over to this button. There we go. So I thought I would start with my journey into literature and understanding the power of words. I grew up surrounded by literature. On mornings and weekends, ABC radio was constantly playing in the kitchen in my family home. And then every weekend involved opening the Age newspaper back when it was a broadsheet and reading all the good bits of the Age, avoiding the finance section and sports, apologies to anyone who loves sports, as well as the Good Weekend magazine. My mother was a nurse and my father was a secondary school teacher. But when I was about 6 years old, my dad did something that I think changed the trajectory of my life. Dad wanted his students to better understand the world outside of their classroom. And to do this, he organised for the students to interview people from all walks of life. One of the first interviews that his students did, his secondary school students, was with prisoners in a prison in Victoria. By 1997, that program had a name. It was called Talkback Classroom. And by the 2000s, it had become an international program that was supported by embassies around the world. And those students, and luckily me too, went travelling with my dad to learn about interview skills and about the power of words. From these experiences of early journalism and the power of words, what I saw Dad do, I made my own media platform. I grew up as a black woman in a rural community. My mum was the only African in our town, and her children were the only African Australian children in that town. I didn't see my mum or me represented in media. So in my early years in Tasmania, I created a website called The Pin with my good friend Ketchy, who is featured in this photo. The Pin was dedicated to safe conversations about race, culture and identity in Australia. We interviewed hundreds of people, we commissioned articles, we created video content and we curated creative content as well. We hosted sold-out events, we headed along to festivals as well, and that website became a resource for schools. It's referenced in books, but more importantly, it was a resource for people who had questions about their own identity or had been questioned about it and couldn't find themselves in mainstream media. That was always the most important part of it. My passion for exploring, I guess, lesser explored stories continues in my role at ABC. One of my early feature articles was with artist Brandy Salmon, who appropriates paintings by old masters to include Aboriginal women. She's an incredible artist based here in Nipaluna, Hobart. I wrote about Evadne, a loctician, or creator of dreadlocks, for people who aren't familiar with that term, who, when she first inquired about her style of hairdressing in Australia, was told that it just didn't exist and so she could just go and do it without a licence. I continue to write stories that explore and highlight our multicultural and age-diverse and ability-diverse community. My other passion is writing about history. So much of journalism is focused on the present and stories within the current news cycle. But history and journalism exploring history helps contextualise the present. People may not necessarily pick up a book to explore Tasmanian history, but they might be prepared to read a 3-minute read about dolerite columns on the Tasman Peninsula that were used for gunning practice by British warships. It is believed that many were destroyed, completely changing the landscape that we see there. They may also click on an article to learn about the land bridge that once connected Tasmania to mainland Australia and was a place where people lived and species thrived. In researching the damage to the pillars, I had to rely entirely on archival newspapers because there was just no other source of information to verify this story. So once again, the power of journalism shone, but journalism from our past. It's obvious that words selected by journalists and editors are a powerful tool of communication. For many years, we have discussed the impact of headlines with poorly or selectively chosen words in situations of domestic violence or sexism. Jane Gilmore's book Fixed explores this topic. We've also seen it in conversations about race, about racism, and about weight. Words chosen by media in relation to Gaza in particular has been a big and ongoing discussion since October 2023. As discussed in a 2004 paper by Mark Levine, who talked about the word genocide and our avoidance of using this word and that impact of avoiding using that particular word. Just this past week, the Australian newspaper has breached a code of conduct with their choice of words in relation to Gazans as well, using terms like black-hearted Arabs and guerrillas to describe people. In Tasmania, the words of journalists have perhaps been more powerful than other states and territories. Up until 1979, the only record of what was said in the Tasmanian Parliament was newspapers. In other states for over 100 years, Hansard, a mostly verbatim transcript of what is said in Parliament, was a service that was used by other states and territories. In Tasmania, we relied entirely upon the Mercury newspaper to learn what politicians spoke of. Those records are incredibly brief and I imagine are impacted by the bias of the journalists. On the screen you can see a list of events that happened in Tasmania that we have no record of what politicians said because we did not have that Hansard service. Things like abolition of the death penalty, the collapse of the Tasman Bridge, the death of Truganini, all of those topics and more. In contemporary times, local journalism has changed lives, prompted reviews into industries, and dismantled political careers. These are just two recent examples to point to. Jane was somebody who had lived for 16 years without a set of teeth, and before this article had featured in an article about dental health. A stranger read that first article and paid for Jane's teeth, so she finally had teeth after 16 years of living without them. The other article featured is ABC journalists Chris Rowbottom and Jessica Moran. Their joint investigation into the state's harness racing industry made or prompted the Tasmanian government to conduct an independent review into the industry. And in my own experience, my articles have led to cultural institutions pursuing items for acquisition, as well as that early article that I mentioned about Brandy Salmon. It helped propel Brandy's art to a national stage, and she just recently featured on Channel 10, which was beautiful to see. Some of the challenges faced by journalism are definitely not new, but more sophisticated and widespread. This image from World War I was branded fake at the time, and it's actually a manipulated image, and Frank Hurley kind of didn't intend to, I guess, fool people. He just wanted to have a combined image that showed what war was actually like. So he took images of multiple exploding shells as well as the images of fighter planes and added that into the bottom image that you can see there. Fake images and fake news are fueled by a speedy media cycle that can sometimes focus on getting a story online or on air first before ascertaining its authenticity. The audience has changed too, and research shows that people who experience the most distress and impairment in daily functioning from social media, such as overuse, are more likely to believe fake news. And they're also more likely to click on fake news and engage with it, even if they realise that it's fake. This year, the theme of International Literacy Day is promoting literacy in the digital era. And part of this I interpret to be not just reading news, but critically analysing what we see. When true and researched, I think one of journalism's most important powers is to remove us from our silo and allow us to meet people within our community or even abroad who we perhaps wouldn't meet otherwise. This image is someone I believe I wouldn't have met if it weren't for my work. A former prisoner who experienced stigma because of his face tattoos, but was having the life-changing experience of having them removed. And I had the pleasure of heading along to one of those appointments, and I definitely know the pain of having a tattoo removed, and he was experiencing that in that moment. But he was also full of joy knowing how much of a change it could potentially make to his life. 10 minutes goes very quickly. In this digital age, we are often faced with a wall of information online, and it is obvious that journalism is still a powerful tool and that journalists are still important, as evidenced by this image. Over 180 to as high as 270 journalists and media workers have been killed in the war on Gaza since October 7th, 2023. Some were killed in targeted strikes by the Israeli military. That works out to just over 10 journalists a month. It makes the war in Gaza the deadliest conflict for journalists in history. UN experts are urging Israel to grant full and free access to international media, as their presence will give a measure of safety to local journalists and keep reports flowing in the world. They say that the international community must act without delay before the last voices in Gaza are shut down. Thank you very much for your time and for the opportunity to speak at this wonderful event.
Now that's applause for just Lucy. I would now like you all to thank every single one of our amazing speakers tonight. May they have given you more questions than answers. And one of the beautiful things about our literary community is that it is a community and we share it. So please join with me to thank every one of us.